Hello there, you are watching Nader Arabi. Blessed to be to develop your creative skills. In this tutorial, we are going to be going through 10 tips for beginners in Adobe InDesign. So let's get started. So in InDesign, when we use the type tool, to left click and draw a text box and fill this with some text. What can often occur as we adjust the size of this is that we get this auto hyphenation. Now this is where words cannot fit within the text box, so it breaks it up into two and connects them with a hyphen. Now sometimes we want that, sometimes we don't. Now when we can remove that easily is to select the text tool and press Command or Ctrl A inside the text box to select everything, and then go up to Window and to type in Tables and select Paragraph, and you will see it. Open it Paragraph panel. There is an option called Hyphenate. Simply uncheck that and your text will no longer be auto hyphenated. Sometimes in InDesign we want to change the case of our text. So if I type in some text here, and we can increase the size of this text. Now I'm just going to create a few copies of this by holding Alt and Shift and dragging down. So if we select the first one and go to type, down to change case, and we can change this to uppercase. We could change the next one to lowercase. Now this one here is already title case, where it capitalizes the first letter on every word, and the last one we have sentence case, where only capitalizes the first letter on the first word. When in InDesign, when we're working with text, what we can do is we can use the type tool to select a portion of text, and we can change various properties. Now some of those may include stroke color, so we can change this to blue. However, this is using the formatting effects text selection. We can change this to formatting effects container as well. So if I were to select this text here by clicking on it with the main selection tool rather than the type tool, if I then go on apply color, it applies it to this bounding box, also known as a container. So you can switch between the two here, and you can see that the respective fills and stroke changes as well. So if I want to change the text color, I can switch over formatting effects text, and the shortcut for that is J on the keyboard, and then I can make the appropriate selection of a color or any other styling option. It's just making sure that you have got the container or the text selected as necessary. Okay, so in InDesign you may want to sometimes add drop shadows. So if we draw a rectangle and we'll give this a color, we can add drop shadow by going up to Object, down to Effects, and we get a whole bunch of different effects. Now these very similar to the blending options that you will find in Photoshop, and we can click drop shadow and we can get very similar or a little bit simplified menu. And we can take various options. We can choose whether this applies to the object, the stroke or the fill, and in some cases the text. So we can adjust the distance here. The distance of the shadow is from the shape we can change. The angle, we can even use the X and Y offset as well, so we can offset it along the horizontal axis or vertical Y axis. We can adjust the size. This is how much the shadow will blur. We can adjust the spread, just makes it a little bit precise and harder around the edges. And we can even add some noise. Now we can click OK and just go back to Object, Effects, and Drop Shadow if you want to go and make any further changes at a later date. So in InDesign, it's possible to create tables. We can do this by using the Type tool to define a text area and then go to Table, Insert Table, and we can specify the number of rows. So we can have 3 columns and 6 rows. Click OK and it creates that table, and we can select all of the different cells with the Type tool by dragging over and go to Table, and then we can go to Table Options, and we get a few different options here. So we can click Table Setup and we get lots of different tabs that we can start adjusting, but we can also go to Cell Options and we can choose the format for contents of these cells. So we can define strokes and fills, so we could select certain parts, so we could change the color, so our table now becomes blue with a thicker stroke, and we can change the style of strokes as well, so we could go for something like a dashed line, and there's a lot of different properties in there that you can use to fully customize your table. And we can then click with the Type tool and then start typing within it. Now this is a really quick tip when you're working in InDesign. If you have defined your margin for your document, your bleed and slug area as well, what you can do is you can very quickly switch between this view here, which shows you a final trimmed version of your document against a gray workspace. You can switch between that by pressing W on the keyboard, and you can see it toggles down here if you like to do it manually or preview a certain view. So now we can press W. We can see our margins, which are helpful for our lining things. We can see our bleed marked by red line here, and we've got our slug area on the right. So we can quickly switch between those, and if you like to edit any of these properties, you go to File, Document Setup, and it will bring up this dialog box, similar to what you see when you first create a document, and you can make any changes here as you need to. Or if you need to change the margins, just go to Layout, Margins and Columns, and you've got these settings there. So when you create document there all together, after you've created a document, you can edit them, but they are just slightly different places. Now when we add images to InDesign by going to File and Place and then navigate it to the image and importing it into InDesign, it will add it in, and if it's a high resolution image, it will be too big, so you may want to scale it down. However, if you drag from the corners, it doesn't actually scale down, it actually crops into image and adjust the bounding box instead. However, if you hold Shift and Command or Control, you can quickly and easily scale the image down, and it will not adjust the bounding box. So press Command or Control depending on whether you are on Mac or PC, and also hold the Shift. Now something else you can do is up here at the top, when you have this selected, you will see present icons here. Now this is for scale X percentage and scale Y percentage, and at the moment they are linked. So if I just keep clicking, you will see the value, it doesn't actually change, but it will increase and decrease the size of the image. Or I just can click in either of these boxes. It makes no difference because the proportions are linked, and then I can use the up and down arrows on my keyboard, or hold the Shift and use up and down arrows on the keyboard to work in larger increments to quickly and easily adjust the size of images. Now once you've imported your image into InDesign, you may wish to adjust the crop. Now we can do this by adjusting the frame, but if we don't want to adjust the frame, we just want to change the crop of the image. For example, zooming in on this landscape, instead of the main selection tool, we can switch over the direct selection tool, and I like to click off everything else to deselect it, and then you see a handlebar, and if we click on this, we can then go up here to the scale X and scale Y percentages and use these arrows to increase the crop, or just click in the box and use up and down arrow keys and adjust the crop as necessary. And once we have a sizing right, with the direct selection tool selected, we can actually just move this around. That's how we can adjust the crop nice and quickly in InDesign. So when working in images in InDesign, there is a variety of different ways that we can encourage the content to fit the frame, or the frame to fit the content. So if I click the image, you can see the blue container or a frame around the edge, and the image is within it. If you right click in the image, we can select fitting, and there is a variety of different options we can choose. So we can fill the frame proportionally, we can fill the content proportionally, we can choose to fit the frame to our content, we can have our content define our frame. So let's click this one, and you can see it fits the content of the frame, or we can have it fill it proportionally, or if we go and adjust the crop, we will zoom in loads and right click again. We will have fit frame to content. Frame then becomes large to fit our content, or you can click right and go fitting and clear, frame, fitting options, and remove everything all together back to when you first imported the image. So when working within InDesign, it's possible to create very large documents, for example brochures, magazines, that include a lot of high-res imagery. Now this can become very taxing on a computer. And InDesign has a few different settings that allowed you to easily handle larger out some information and high-res imaging really well. So at the moment you can see the image on the screen actually looks a bit pixelated. Now this is a bit high-res image. Why is it pixelated? Well, if you go to object at the top and down to display performance, you will see that typical display is selected. Now I can change this to fast display, and what it does is it will change this image to a gray box with a strike through it both one direction and the other. Now if you have a magazine that's 100 pages long, and if you have got hundreds and hundreds of different high-res images, it will become incredibly difficult to navigate through it. You will need an incredibly powerful computer, or it will just break your computer. So this is a great way to work on layout without having to focus on the imagery. So you can kind of just add all of these images in. And this is a pretty quick way of working. InDesign will handle this incredibly easily because it hasn't got to render entire image. We can then go a level up. We can go to display or typical display. It doesn't display the image at its full resolution. It's a fairly low resolution. You can see it's very pixelated, but this is still relatively easy for InDesign to handle even with lots of images, but it just drops in the quality. So what you see isn't actual end result. In fact, if I want to export this now, it would export it as a high resolution image. It just makes it a lot easier to handle when you're working on a large document. Now if you are backing a complete powerhouse of a computer, you can go to object display performance and use high quality display, or if you just want to preview how something looks without the pixelation, you can select that and it will show you your imagery or everything in your document in its high-res format. There we go, there is 10 tips to get you started in Adobe InDesign. As always guys, please feel free to leave any question or comments down below. Like this video if you enjoyed it. I will see you in the next video.